Okay, everybody, we've made it 1 month into the new year. I hope you all I hope you all are doing well. This is going to be my last follow-up video for people in the New Year's resolutions until the end of the year when I want to address this again. But I think this is an interesting time because between this month and next month, between January and February is when most people drop off. And at this point, everybody who's making videos about New Year's resolutions and coming up with these goals, they're done posting, right? You don't hear anything from anybody else about this stuff beyond this point. And that's why I wanted to make this video. So for those of you who are still going, congratulations. First and foremost, great job. It's not easy to implement a new habit, a change in your life, because it's not about, as you've probably learned at this point, it's not about motivation. It's about discipline. It's about doing it anyway, even when you don't feel like it. Now, I wanted to make this video for everybody else, everybody who has not successfully kept going, because I think there's something important to address here. By this point, a lot of people have given up on their goal, or by next month they will have given up and they move on. You're over it. You know, you tried, it didn't work. You're like, okay, great, I'll move on. I'll do it next year. We'll figure something else out. I'm just not attached to it anymore. And that is the other big ingredient for finding the goal that you're trying to have, to implement, to change in your life. So, you know, I talked about in my previous videos about making SMART goals, you know, being very specific, being action oriented, and, you know, not waiting for everything to be perfect and aligned, that sort of stuff. The other big key thing that a lot of people miss is the pain. If you've got something in your life that you want to change and it's not uncomfortable enough, you're not going to change. And it's not just a you thing. This is an almost everybody kind of a thing, because you have to take on more discomfort to change that pattern. Does that make sense? So if you're trying to implement a new goal, remember, it's not about motivation, it's about discipline. And discipline involves discomfort. So if you're going into a new goal and you don't hate that, whatever it is that you're trying to change, if you don't hate it so much that the discomfort that you're going to get from implementing that level of discipline into your life, you're not going to stick to the new goal, because the discipline and the effort that it's going to take far exceeds the discomfort of just staying the way you are, staying the way, you know, keeping whatever it is around that it is the thing that you're trying to change, right? So, you know, you've probably heard that saying, people change when the pain of change is greater. I butchered that. People change when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. So this implies there is pain in changing. We're comfortable with our patterns. There's a reason we're mentally, we're wired for this. We're wired for prediction. We're wired to identify patterns, but that also means we're wired to use patterns. We're wired to fall into patterns. That's why we call it getting stuck in a rut, because you've been grooving out that pattern for so long. So for everybody out there who has fallen off the train of sticking to their goals, I want you to think about this. The game is designed to hurt. It's designed to be uncomfortable. And just because you've fallen off doesn't mean you've lost. It just means you're not ready for it yet. And maybe, you know, there's some people where they'll try something and they'll fall off and they'll quit, and a month later they're like, you know what? No, I'm over it. I am actually sick of it. Whatever it is that I want to change, and I want this. And actually, you know, there's another thing here that I've been ignoring, but I should touch on this too, is that there are two forms of energy that we use. There's a pushing energy, something that is pushing you away. That's usually pain. That's what most people experience, right? That's kind of why I've been talking to it this whole time. You experience something in your life that you dislike, and you're currently experiencing it, and it repels you. And that repulsion, that pushing force, is what drives you to set the discipline to create a new habit, to make a new goal, to change your life. The other side of that equation is a pulling force. And the pulling force is more, I don't want to say rare, but it is harder to come by. It is harder to find. And people have to really be in tune with themselves to have a sense of greater purpose, to experience that pull. But the pulling force is so much stronger, not in the sense that it's a driving factor that has more power, but it feels like that's the path of least resistance. Like you have a pulling force that's pulling you in a direction, and something is compelling you to do it, and you know your discomfort. You know there's a level of discomfort with it, but you feel compelled to do it anyway, so it doesn't feel as heavy. So the push and pull force that you experience in these times, they're almost similar, or they're very similar in like their strength, but one feels like it has less resistance, and so it feels 10 times stronger. And so if you don't have a pulling force, something that you can do, right, to kind of land this plane, something that you can utilize is, if you don't have that pulling force, do some soul searching, do some inner work, do some shadow work, and identify that future state, that desired future state that you really want. And also, if you have something that is making you uncomfortable, that's a sign as to where that pulling force is. If you're not experiencing it, these things go hand in hand. It's a pull towards something greater, but it's also often a repulsion away from something. Not always. Sometimes you just like, hey, I want to make this change because I feel that this is right. But for a lot of people, you'll find that they're actually hand in hand, and maybe you're just experiencing one half of it. So something that you can do is meditate on that and make it worse. So this is an exercise that I've done for a little while now, and it's surprisingly helpful. When you have something that you want to change about yourself, think about it. And don't just think about it cognitively, but like emotionally. Feel it and worsen it. What would happen if you continued down this path and you didn't stay stagnant, you didn't stay right where you were at, but the problem got worse? And imagine what your life is like as that problem gets 5 and 10 times worse. How is your health? How are your relationships? How are you as a person? Worsen that image and emotionally tie yourself to that future state, because that's the path you're ultimately headed down. Unless you just remain on this forever plane of constantly doing a little bit of effort to not go down that route, but not enough effort to get yourself out of it. And sometimes even just that stagnation is enough to drive you mad that you want to leave it. And that is far more like push and pull energy that you can get out of just thinking about something than your just kind of day-to-day experience. Because if you experience it and you ignore it, you're going to go nowhere with it. And that's fine. If you don't want to change anything in that part of your life, that's okay. You don't have to. You're not here to live by anybody's rules in that sense, right? This is your life. But if there is something that you've been wanting to make that change to, you can use this as a tool to, in the beginning, it might feel like it's a motivational tool, but you're using it as a way to create that discipline, because you have to remind yourself what that pain is really like. And this, again, this falls into the thing, people change when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. And if the pain that you're experiencing is not great enough to give you that push, imagine it worse. And so if you're at this point and you've fallen off and you haven't successfully stuck to your goal for this month, it's okay. Don't wait for the new year though. Don't wait for all that time to pass, because you're going to create that rut. You're going to be in this groove of saying, it's okay, I'll do it later. Don't. Take action now and take smaller steps. Refine your goal. Make it so that it's just, instead of 10% better, make it 5% better. So instead of, let's say, for example, your goal is to work out every day or lose weight. For me, it was working out was a big one. This is a personal example. So one of my biggest challenges was getting motivated to actually, disciplined to work out every day. Or even like once a week when it was really bad. And what I did, instead of setting the goal to work out for 30 minutes or however many minutes, X times a day, or X number of days a week, my new goal was pick up weights for 5 minutes. And it started off as just literally just pick up the weight. And once I was picking up the weight, I was like, okay, yeah, I'll work out. And then once I was working out, I was like, oh, working out for 10 minutes isn't that bad. Actually, it's not that much time at all. And then that progressed into 20 minutes and into half an hour. And then suddenly the next day I was like, well, I didn't destroy myself, so I can pick up weights again. And then that progressed. And everything beyond the initial goal is just cherry on top. So you get the dopamine hit of saying, I picked up weights today and I did one step in the direction of my goal, even just one step. And then everything else beyond that point is just extra dopamine hits, extra cherry on top, extra reward. So if you're struggling with your goals, think about them, worsen them, really feel what it would be like to live that life of them being worse than they are now. And then rein your goals in just a little bit, just enough. And there's a lot of high achievers out there that this is terrible advice. There's a lot of high achievers out there that they need the opposite. I want you to set actually greater goals. That's a personal thing. You kind of need to identify who you identify as, right? Identify yourself. Are you the type of person that small baby step goals will get you where you need to go in the long run? Or are you the kind of person that really likes to be set behind the pack so that you got to run to catch up? I'm a big fan of that one myself. And it's interesting because that's been my tactic for most of my life. And there are certain avenues where I realized I needed to baby step. So I have certain areas where I baby step, and I have other areas where I'm like, dude, set me behind the pack and I will hit the ground running full force, right? You fight your hardest when you start from behind. So right now, if you've fallen off the wagon, you're a little bit behind. Use that as motivation if you can. If not, bring it back. Step your goals down. But you got to identify how you work best. Okay? So I hope that that's some helpful advice for you. And I hope that, this leads you to something greater. Maybe accomplishing some goals, even a little bit, even 1% better every day, right? It compounds on itself and it's worth the effort. All right. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.